All right, it does feel like we are live. We are live. Okay, great. So today we have Bitcoin back over the 200-week moving average, which is absolutely amazing news. We also have Bitcoin back at the same levels that it was when the SEC attacked Binance on the 5th of June. So you can see that on that day, Bitcoin was at 27,000. The other bit of good news is that we have leverage going up on Bitcoin, which means that people are all of a sudden getting some confidence back in Bitcoin and are willing to take out leverage long bets. Now, the reason why they're willing to do this is because of the Bitcoin ETF news, the potential BlackRock ETF that may actually finally be approved. And there was an analyst, his name is 𝗵𝗿𝗍𝗂, who's a Bloomberg analyst specifically on ETFs. And just listen to his response, because we're going to listen to his response. We're going to listen to what he said about the BlackRock ETF, but just listen to what he said when he was asked about the BlackRock ETF.
What's your take?
Shock. I would never have predicted this, and this is all I do. And I'm proud of some predictions I have made that have come true, but this is something I just could have never have predicted. When I saw the CoinDesk article, I didn't say it was not true. I just said, could this really be true? Like, I just was very skeptical. CoinDesk, though, props to them. They've had several great scoops.
So he was shocked, and he's an ETF analyst, and he was shocked about the potential of a BlackRock ETF coming into crypto. And we're going to break down what he thinks is what this means and how much money this is actually going to bring into space. But the truth is that right now, Bitcoin is not our problem. Right now, the problem actually lies here in the altcoin market. So if you look at our favorite altcoins relative to Bitcoin, you take, say you take Bitcoin from mid-May, or when the last time Bitcoin was here, say 24th of May, where Bitcoin was at 27,000. You've got Bitcoin back at 27,000, but look at some of our favorite alts since that day. So you've got Solana down. Let's go to 24th of May to where we are today. Solana down 18.9%. You've got a this is Solana, but so this is let's look at 𝗏𝗡. So let's actually get 𝗏𝗡 here and look at 𝗏𝗡 versus let's have a look here. 𝗏𝗡 versus USDT. You can look at it on a perpetual, and if you look at that since the 15th of May, or the last time Bitcoin was at that level over here, you've got it 𝗏𝗡 down 33%, while Bitcoin is actually at the same price. And you can see it when you look at the bubbles. If you look at the bubbles, all the bubbles, if you look at the monthly, are pretty much red except for one or two of them. So the big question is whether this is actually part of the cycle. The question is whether we're going to follow a normal cycle, and whether we're going to get Bitcoin and then money flowing into ETH, and then after ETH runs the large cap alts and then the small cap alts, or whether this time the cycle is going to be different. Because I know for a lot of us that are holding altcoins, we're looking at this, we're watching the bull market in stocks, and the bull market is flying in stocks. Bitcoin is getting a slight bull market, but only because of the BlackRock news. And then we're wondering what's going to happen to our favorite altcoins. And that's really what we're going to be covering today. I've got Gareth Soloway with me. I do want to speak to him about the Nasdaq pump and the stock market pump that he said he thought that the Nasdaq was going to go down. I wonder what he's thinking now, and I wonder if he's actually changed his tune. So we've got a lot to talk about today. Not an ordinary show, actually a very big show. Let's go, guys. I'll tell you, I'm hearing Gareth in my ear. Alrighty. Listen, welcome back. And if you aren't already subscribed to our channel, to 636,000 subscribers now. How many subscribers are we now? 636,000 subscribers, growing every single day. We're now growing at about 1,000 subscribers every 2 days. So if you haven't already subscribed, join the movement. And if you are a subscriber, just like this content. We did start early today because a lot of people complained that we start late. So today we started early. Also, we started early because Gareth's here, and he's got to go and do his market open stream. But I do want to speak to him before he does his market open stream. And specifically, what I want to speak to him is about this bull market that's currently happening in stocks. You got the US 500, which is the Nasdaq, or the US. Sorry, you got the US 500, which is the S&P, and you got the US Tech 100, which is the Nasdaq. Both on absolute flyers this year. I mean, if you look at where we started the year on the Nasdaq, we started the year about here, and the Nasdaq is now up 40%. And I wonder if Gareth has changed his tune. So let me get Gareth in here. Gareth, welcome, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Rand. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Guys, so, you know, a lot of you don't know, but I feel like I've known Gareth forever, and we only actually met face-to-face in Miami. And since then, our bromance has become bigger and bigger, right, Gar?
That's right. Absolutely.
Listen, let's get straight into the charts. And specifically, I want to talk about the bull run in the Nasdaq and the S&P, or specifically, it's actually all markets. It's Japan, it's the DAX, it's the CAC, it is the Nasdaq. All of the previous ones at all-time highs. The Nasdaq up 40% this year. The S&P just a couple of percent away. Sorry, there we go. Just a couple of percent from its all-time highs. How are you calling this market?
Yeah, so there's no doubt that I've been surprised by the move up that we've seen in the tech stocks. So especially large cap tech, that's been carrying this whole entire move. And interestingly enough, you could see this move on the Nasdaq and how vertical it's been. But if you look at the RSP, and this is kind of very telling, this is the equal weight S&P 500. Look at the equal weight S&P 500. So again, you can see that we're still sideways overall in the S&P when you take all the stocks, the 500 stocks at equal weights versus the way the indices are structured, where the market caps are the bigger the market cap, the bigger the weighting. So what that tells us is that there's been a handful of stocks that have been leading this charge higher, the NVIDIAs of the world, the Teslas of the world, the Microsofts, the Apples, etc., the trillion-dollar companies essentially. So I'm still somewhat skeptical. I'd like to just bring up a couple little things for you guys here. Let me see if I can find this on the charts, the NASDAQ composite. So if you look at the NASDAQ composite, right, from the lows, we're about 38% to the upside. All right, so that's the low on the NASDAQ. We actually fell 38%. We've rallied back 38%. Now, if we go to the weekly chart and I scroll back to the .com bubble, this is kind of interesting here. In the .com bubble, we collapsed 41%. We rallied 41% before the downside came back in. And we obviously went down about 80% after that. So while I think this is an amazing move to the upside, I just want to bring a little bit of logic. You know, I'm all about data and logic. Past history has shown us, and by the way, I'm not saying this is another .com. I'm just saying past history of bull markets, when they collapse, we get these meteoric bounces that are almost equal. And again, to look at the .com and see a 41% drop and then a 41% bounce before we dropped 80 more percent, that's powerful. Now, lastly, I just got to show you this because you guys know I don't like just 2 data points. I want more data points. The more data points, the better. So if we go to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and we go back to the 1929 crash. Check this out.
I mean, that's a data point almost 100 years ago.
Right. So look at this. In 1929, the markets collapsed 50%. We rallied 52%. And then the Great Depression took over. So again, let's be clear. The markets have been making me wrong for the last month or two. There's no doubt about it. I've been surprised by how much money has flown into some of these mega cap stocks and how much the markets have rallied to the upside. But having said that, you have a Fed that's saying now they're going to tighten 2 more times the rest of the year. The market wasn't prepared for that. We're now going into a quiet period where the stock market, individual stocks that are doing buybacks, they can't buy now going into earnings. So I'm interested to see that. And then you also have data like the jobless claims, which was for the first time, we saw the biggest jump 2 weeks ago of jobless claims, which is people filing for unemployment, that we have seen since 2021. So if you do see a slowdown, I don't think the market's pricing in any negative news here. If we do see negative news, then the stock market likely will come back in. Having said that, could we go up a little bit more? There's always that chance.
Okay, so let's just summarize it. At these levels, and I'm talking to levels of the Nasdaq at 15,000, long or short?
Mm-hmm. So I'm short. I'm relatively heavily short at this point.
Okay, so that's a good call. Let's talk about Bitcoin, and specifically, let's say you were half right and half wrong. You were right about Bitcoin. You were wrong about the Nasdaq. You shorted Bitcoin at 30,000. We are way below 30,000, and I'm going to add, just for our viewers, that you actually shorted a lot of the altcoins at that same period, and those altcoins have been much, much, much harder hit.
Yeah.
This Bitcoin ETF news, before you look at the charts, how big do you think a BlackRock ETF could be for Bitcoin? Really? Like, I know you're a gold bull, and I know that a lot of people say that the big reason, or one of the big reasons for gold's meteoric rise was because of the BlackRock ETF, the GLD ETF. Do you think that the same thing could happen with Bitcoin?
I do. I think a spot ETF is a huge game changer to allow retail to kind of fully get in. And when I'm not talking about retail crypto people, we're already in, right? It's about the other people that are maybe a little on the older side where it starts to give confidence, right? So we saw the futures ETF come out. That was even in the bull market, and we saw the collapse. So it doesn't mean you can't have bear markets when you have a spot ETF. But what it does is it's basically saying that the government, the SEC, is giving the green light. And the reason I say that, and you can say, well, it's not approved yet, so why are they giving the green light? But when you have a company that manages what, $11 trillion and is that close to the government, you can't tell me that they didn't consult the SEC and say, hey, can we launch this ETF? And what this is doing, by the way, this is separating. You see Bitcoin dominance breaking out in this scenario as people start to say, okay, the SEC is fine with Bitcoin. Bitcoin will remain as is going forward. Therefore, it's safer to invest in Bitcoin. And so again, I do think it's a positive for Bitcoin itself. I think the alts are still another story here because again, we just don't know the rules for the altcoins.
Okay, tell me about Bitcoin dominance. Do you see Bitcoin dominance going back to like wait, before you go there, tell me about Bitcoin. Tell me about Bitcoin. Do you think that we're now going to break through this 27,000 and do you think we're going to test those 30,000, or do you think we're going to bounce back into that channel?
Yeah, so this chart is an awesome chart right now, and I simplified it. We're now in a downward channel, right? So parallel lines that we've been down at. Notice we're right up at that upper area. So this is this week, the next few days will be very, very key for Bitcoin. Can it break out? If it breaks out of here, I think it goes back to 30,500 and retests that resistance level. If it can't, then you're coming down to this downslope, this upsloping trend line. Do we break below that, and do we head down to 23 to 24,000? So this is, again, to be honest, it's hard to know which way it's going to go here in the next few days. But if you can break above this blue line, which is around 27,250, I think that's where you get momentum to come in even more so and carry it towards that 30,000 mark.
Okay, so we want 27,250, and then we want to break through that 30,000 convincingly, and then Gareth Soloway gets turned into a short-term Bitcoin bull, right?
Well, so just to be fair, so I had my Ethereum, one of the shorts that I already covered this one, right? So Ethereum, when it came down right here to this low level to see this trend line, this was that same connector trend line that we saw on Bitcoin. Just Bitcoin hasn't well, it kissed it as well. But I took that off the table, and so I'm no longer short Ethereum because of that. So far, that's been a good call. I still have my Bitcoin short out there, but I will say this: if we break above this, I'm going to cover it. All right. Now that'll be a small profit. I'll make about $3,000, $2,500 on it, which is fine. You don't make $1 million on every trade, but I don't think I'll go long yet. I need to see what happens with regulation, and I need to see what happens at the 30,000 level.
All right, I'm going to ask you another question around Bitcoin dominance. So the Bitcoin dominance is now over 50%.
Yeah.
First of all, do you believe that you can actually chart Bitcoin dominance? Because Bitcoin dominance is not really like a volume trade with traders specifically trading it. It's Bitcoin against the price of a lot of other assets. So kind of like, first thing is, do you believe as a chartist that any charts that you do on Bitcoin dominance are actually accurate?
I do, actually. I do. And I think if you just look at the overall chart, you can see that, look at this pivot low going back to 2018. And if you connect it through these, you get the lows in 2022 in terms of Bitcoin dominance. And then you could also argue, look at all these highs and how we're just breaking out here. So I think again, you can chart this, use this as a chart. I think that Bitcoin dominance has upside probably over the next 6 months towards this level here, which is around 57%, and this downsloping level, which will take it right in that same area. So I think Bitcoin dominance gets to about 57 to 60%. All
right, Gareth, I do need to ask you another question, but now this is a very different question. So I've done a close up here so we can look into your eyes here. So I know that you've got paid groups in the form of in the money stocks and verified investing, which is your crypto thing. And I know you do a lot of live trading and whatever else. And I need to ask you a very, very, very serious question. Can we do some kind of deal for the Banter community specifically to give the Banter community a much better deal than anybody else is getting on your paid platforms? Now, that's what I want to know, because I really want our community to go to your platforms, but I really want a special Banter deal. So you don't have to give me the deal now, But can you commit to me that we will have an offline chat and we will come back to the Banter fam with some kind of really special, unique offer to join your groups?
Yes, I will commit to that. You and I we're having our bromance. We can work something out.
Okay, Gareth, thank you, buddy. I know you need to get to your call.
Thank you so much, Rand. Have a great one.
You see, I got him, and I got us a deal. You see that? I got Gareth, and I got us a deal for the Banter community. I'll talk to him. We'll do something. Anyway, I do want to talk about what Gareth left off on, and I want to talk about specifically around the Bitcoin dominance, because if you are trading in altcoins, it actually is starting to get a little bit terrifying. Here it is. You've got Bitcoin, as I said, at the same place that it was on the 10th or 20th of March, and you've got the altcoins down a lot. You got Matic down 20%. You've got Solana down you got Matic down 33%. You got Solana down 20% since exactly the same day. And as I said, you can actually see it in the bubbles. If you look at the Banter bubbles, you can actually see that for the month, it looks terrible for the altcoins, and Bitcoin is actually exactly where it started the month. Now, the next place that you can actually see that happening is you can see it happening on the Bitcoin dominance. This Bitcoin dominance keeps going up, keeps consolidating, and then keeps breaking up to the upside as people get more confident in Bitcoin. And that's really what's happening here. You're getting people getting more confident in Bitcoin, specifically after the BlackRock ETF news. And this is causing the Bitcoin dominance to go up. And it looks pretty terrifying, because we're now asking ourselves, are we actually going to have the same cycle as we normally have? Is this really going to be a Bitcoin, Ethereum, large cap alts, and then small cap alt cycle? That is what we've had in all of the previous cycles, but it is starting to feel like maybe we're not going to get that same cycle happening again. And I think if you're holding altcoins, this becomes a little bit terrifying. This becomes a little bit scary, because now you're going, hold on a second, maybe my altcoin that I was so confident in is going to be a security. And I think that is exactly the part of the cycle that we're in. And I want to show you something over here. Let me just quickly get the right chart here, but I want to just show you something over, where are we? Let me try and find you one of the charts here. So this is the chart that I wanted to show you guys in that regard. What you can see is that the Bitcoin dominance, before bull runs, the Bitcoin dominance actually rises. Now here, because the chart is so zoomed out, you can't see it. But we also had the dominance go up quite a bit. And then we had a huge drop in dominance as we got into the next bull cycle. And then over here, we had the Bitcoin dominance going from 36% or from 32% or whatever the low was, all the way back up to 70% in the bear market before we actually had the 2020 bull run. So this is not out of nature for Bitcoin. In fact, what is probably happening here, and the question is whether we will go all the way back up to 70%, or whether we'll have a repeat of the period before the previous bull run. So you can see in the period before the previous bull run, we were here at about 90. In fact, let's try and get a better Bitcoin dominance chart. Let's go into the weekly here, and we can look at the weekly here and see how far back we can go. Maybe if we can go far enough back. Okay, it's very difficult to see, but what you can see here is you had the Bitcoin dominance before. You had the Bitcoin dominance go from 94% all the way up to 97.5%, which is quite scary. Then we have a bull market. The dominance drops all the way down to 35%. Then the dominance goes back up to 72%. Then we have another bull market, or 73%. Then we have another bull market, and the dominance drops to about 38%. Now the question is, are we going to go back up to the 70s, or are we not going to go back up to the 70s? Regardless of whether we are or whether we're not, what we're seeing here is we're seeing the repeat of the change in cycle. And it's quite a healthy pattern that we need to actually get used to. What's happening in this cycle is that the narratives of the last bull run need to die. The narratives that were garbage narratives, meme coins, potentially a lot of these NFT plays, potentially a lot of the DeFi plays that we had, to be honest, those actually need to die. They need to die, and we need to have the strong soldiers stronger and the weak soldiers dead, so that we can actually continue with the next bull run. Now, in the previous cycle, a lot of the old layer ones died. So you look at the old layer ones like the EOS and all those, I don't even remember all those layer ones, but they were what caused the 2017 bull market. And in the next bull market, those coins actually died or almost died or got greatly weakened. And that's exactly what's happening now here in this bull market. We need to let the old narratives die. And as the old narratives die, the altcoins, because they are the old narratives, will die. They will feel like they're dying. And when that happens, that will give us enough for the rebirth. And we'll get the rebirth, which will be a whole lot of very strong soldiers. Now, do I think that you should now start writing off your altcoins? Absolutely not. And the reason why I say that you shouldn't start writing off your altcoins is because what you will notice is that you will notice that even the altcoins that seemed like they weren't going to make it, even the most wounded soldiers actually got up and actually emerged very, very strong. And I guess the best example of that is if we look at ETH. If we look at ETH after the 2017 bull market, I think the price of ETH actually went down to about $78 or somewhere around there. Let's quickly zoom in here. And you can see that ETH went from a high of about $375, but it actually went down to $76. And if you look at where ETH is today, you're looking at ETH at 1,730. So just because the price of your favorite altcoin is going down, doesn't mean that this is the end. Doesn't mean that this altcoin isn't going to survive. What's going to happen is ultimately it's like a battle, and the ones that actually get hit the hardest and actually then manage to get up and become the strongest in the next cycle. That's exactly what happened to Ethereum. Ethereum was really, really, really hard hit, but somehow it survived. And when it survived, it came back and it became much stronger in the next cycle. And this is exactly what's going on now. We're getting a whole lot of attacks. These attacks are designed to cleanse the market of all the old narratives so that we can have a new market and a new bull run with all the new narratives. And so I tweeted this today and I said, look, we survived all these things. We survived the 2018 bear market. We survived China banning crypto. We survived India banning crypto, Tesla selling their Bitcoin, China banning mining, Luna, 𝗕𝗏 Capital, Celsius, BlockFi, Voyager, FTX, Andre leaving Phantom, the threat of EU regulations, the New York Attorney General against KuCoin, the USDC depeg. We survived all the money leaving and going to AI. The SEC against Binance, the SEC against Coinbase, the SEC against Solana, ADA, Matic. We survived Charles Hoskinson going down to the middle of the sea to find aliens to add to the Cardano community. We survived all of that. And what we realize is that even though we have survived all these attacks with the 2018 bear market, we survived Richard Hart stopping shopping at Gucci on Instagram. We survived Charles Hoskinson going to the bottom of the ocean to try and find aliens to add to the Cardano community. Even after all of that, today what we have is we have Bitcoin trading at $27,000. And what that shows you is that all these attacks actually make us stronger. When I say stronger, I don't only mean the price going up, but I actually think that if you take all these attacks and you add to all these attacks Richard Hart stopping to having shop at Gucci and posted on Instagram, and you take all these attacks and you also add Charles Hoskinson surviving a deep dive to the ocean to find aliens, and you say to yourself, even after all of that, the network itself, the Bitcoin network itself, the hash rate of a network, the number of miners actually securing the network is actually the highest that it has ever been. Which means that, put aside price, despite price, what you're actually saying is that right now, today, the network is the strongest that it's ever been, even after these attacks. And so when you look at that, when you look at Bitcoin with those kind of eyes, and you look at crypto with those kind of eyes, what you say to yourself is, there's going to be attacks. In those attacks, there are going to be a lot of casualties. We're going to lose some of our best soldiers. Some of the soldiers are going to survive, even though they're going to come back really, really wounded. But when they survive, they're going to become strong, like Ethereum came out of the last bull market. That is why traditional TradFi is now getting interested in the space, because what they're saying is you cannot kill this thing. You cannot kill Bitcoin and crypto. And that is why all of a sudden, as of about a week ago, there has been a land grab for crypto. You saw BlackRock come onto the market, and you heard what 𝗏𝗏𝗏 said about BlackRock coming into the market. He, as an ETF analyst, was shocked. But it's not only BlackRock. It is BlackRock plus crypto exchange backed by Citadel Securities, Fidelity, and Schwab, now starts its operations. A new cryptocurrency exchange backed by Citadel Securities, Fidelity Investments, and Charles Schwab is seeking business from brokers and investors interested in digital asset securities. Okay, so that's one. You've got all these headlines, okay, coming out. BlackRock files for ETF. Fidelity Investments reportedly filing BlackRock type spot ETF. Soros Fund Management now saying that crypto is ripe for takeover. You have unprecedented interest from TradFi to come and clean up this crypto market and come in. And as I said yesterday it was, they let the kids play in the sandpit. And when the kids actually had something cool, they said, okay, now let the grown-ups take over. And that's exactly what's going on here. TradFi are now coming in here at an unprecedented rate. Initially, they're coming into Bitcoin. I'll give it to you. Right now, they're coming into Bitcoin, but it's not going to end in Bitcoin. And I'll show you this in a couple of seconds. I think it's super important that we listen to 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and we listen to what he said around his thoughts around a Bitcoin BlackRock ETF. Just listen to this.
Files for a Bitcoin spot ETF. What's your take?
Shock. I would never have predicted this. And this is all I do. And I'm proud of some predictions I have made that have come true. But this is something I just could have never have predicted. When I saw the CoinDesk article, I didn't say it was not true. I just said, could this really be true? Like, I just was very skeptical. CoinDesk, though, props to them. They've had several great scoops. They are really on a journalism tear right now. And it turned out to be true. And then I was like, wait a second. BlackRock just doesn't randomly do things. They're just not that kind of company. And they know.
Listen, this is the part that's important. He says, look, BlackRock don't do things. There's no coincidences here. BlackRock are very, 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 very calculated. Listen.
People at the SEC, people who have worked at the SEC work for them. They're not the kind of company that's like, oh, let's just throw our hat in the ring just in case. So that's why I became much more confident. My percentage odds that a spot approval would happen, say, in the next year would be like 1-2%. It's jumped to 30-40 just because of BlackRock, because of who they are, who they know, how they operate. This is a lot. This should be met with hope. That said, we have had our hope dashed before. We've seen filings come in, they all get rejected. So we've seen this movie before. But the only thing is we've never seen it with BlackRock. I can't understate how out of character this would be if they didn't have this all figured out. So we just got breaking news also that in the 19B4 filing, they're going to team up with Nasdaq for a surveillance sharing agreement with a crypto exchange. We don't know whether it's Binance or
So he says, look, there's no coincidences here. BlackRock know exactly what they're doing. They're not just here to throw their hat in the ring and kind of apply for an ETF. If they're saying that they are applying for an ETF, they know something. They have been working with the SEC. They've got all their ducks in a row, and they are about to make a very big move here. I want you to also listen to this. He talks about Coinbase, which is exactly what we spoke about the other day. I want you guys quickly just to hear this.
So that's sort of where we're at.
That would solve their one complaint they've always had, which is that Bitcoin can be manipulated. It trades on exchanges that can be manipulated. That is the sole reason that the SEC has not allowed these things to pass, and NASDAQ filing with them potentially solves it. That's a crazy detail.
It is. The other little, I'll go over the wonky detail. The surveillance sharing agreement, that's a tongue twister, was supposed to be with a exchange of significant size.
Okay.
So there's now a little debate. All this is playing out literally right now. We're going back and forth with some smart people on Twitter about whether Coinbase would be considered significant size. Somebody's saying it would have to be them with Binance. They didn't name the exchange, but they're using Coinbase as the custodian, so maybe it goes to think that they would use them as the exchange. But if it's Binance, that could be good too. But Binance is in trouble.
So it's Coinbase.
I mean, it's probably Coinbase.
So it is good for our Coinbase thesis. And I don't know what Coinbase is doing today. Okay, it's up again. So now Coinbase is up at $57. Remember, we've been telling you to buy Coinbase since a long time ago. And the last time we told you was just under $50. Now we've got Coinbase up at about $57. So that's another little feather that I think we can all put in our caps. I was super interested about what 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 would think around how much money this ETF could actually bring into crypto. Because yes, I know we're a bunch of crypto people, and as a bunch of crypto people, we want to believe that this can be the game changer for Bitcoin, and that we're going to follow the same path as gold followed when they launched the ETF, and we can sales pitch ourselves, and we can get into our echo chamber, and we can all, prop up how big we think this is going to be. But I think it's better to hear it from an ETF analyst to give us a point of view of what he thinks. So it starts around 1150. Let's quickly go to about 1150.
Here's the thing. If you want it more widely adopted, then you should root for this, because there's $26 trillion that advisors manage for people, right? So people who have a lot of money and they want help managing it. So that's called an advisor. $26 trillion is a ton of money, right? They are probably only going to use an ETF to get Bitcoin. Now, they wouldn't have, even if they put 1% of their collective assets, that's 2.6 trillion. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, that's 2.6 trillion. Did I get that right?
No, 10%.
That's 10%. Sorry.
That's a big number. I would
weird.
put 10%. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. Let's put that on the record.
Instead of me trying to figure out 1% is, I think it's 260 billion. But like, I think let's do, if they put like 5%, right? You're talking about $1 trillion or $2 trillion.
Yes.
In other words, it's just a lot of money. And so those people are the kind of people who love iShares and Vanguard. And so if they have iShares label on something, they trust it. Huge. I'm telling you, and they trust the ETF. So this is almost like a portal that opens up to all of this boomer conservative money. Whereas if you don't want any of that going on, then you shouldn't root for this, because this is like an opening to a huge swap.
So he's talking about serious money coming into crypto because of this Bitcoin ETF. And it does go with the thesis that we presented to you yesterday on the show, saying we think that because of BlackRock's distribution, this is actually a really, really big deal. And it's going to bring a whole lot of money into crypto. The last thing that I was interested in here is whether or not he really believes it's going to be approved. Now, I know he says that BlackRock wouldn't have gone in if they didn't think it was going to get approved, but I needed more information. So I listened a bit further in the podcast. And by the way, this is Luke Martin's podcast. He's a good friend. If you guys want to check it out, just go and check it out. Let's quickly listen to this.
To 1 approval versus denial rating when they try to get an ETF passed. And then someone tweeted out the number of Bitcoin ETFs that have passed, and it's like 60 or 70. So we have like the best pitcher in the MLB going against the best batter, a home run slugger. Is that normal for a company to get all their ETFs passed? Like, is BlackRock the best in the business, or is it 50-50?
First of all, I'm going to meme that somehow. I got to figure out the right meme, but you're right. That is a killer matchup, and that's why everybody and myself is so drawn to this. There's this. It's like a heavyweight fight between two undefeated boxers, right?
It is.
Sorry, I lost your question and all that.
The question is this normal? Like, is BlackRock that outlier, or the 157-1? Like, they're Floyd Mayweather, or is everyone just
they're 575-1.
575-1.
Well, granted, a lot of them are normal 40 Act funds. They would know they would get rejected, but I think the bigger point is, like, a company like VanEck or a smaller company or ARK. Like, VanEck has tried a couple times to get the Bitcoin ETF through. They filed for an Ether futures. They're taking their shots, right? BlackRock isn't like a shot taker like that. They're much more calculated. So it isn't normal for that kind of a matchup to happen. I almost feel like BlackRock wouldn't go against somebody who's 60-0 unless they knew how they could win.
Right, they picked their fights.
So that's it. So, I mean, he thinks that BlackRock could actually win this. And as he says, they're going up against the SEC, which has denied 60 Bitcoin ETFs. But he believes that they can actually win this. And if that is the case, that is why we're getting this pump in Bitcoin. That is why we're getting the Bitcoin price actually pumping, the leverage actually getting back into Bitcoin. Because people are saying, look, we believe in crypto. We know that Bitcoin can't be attacked. We think that this ETF is actually really, really positive. And as people say, probably the most positive news of the last 18 to 24 months. The fact that crypto Twitter and the market altogether is still in disbelief about it makes me think better times will come sooner than expected. People are doing some calculations as to how much money this could bring into Bitcoin, comparing it to how much money went into GLD when GLD became, and all of those good things. I also probably think that we should mention that it's not only Bitcoin. So this is Larry Fink. Larry Fink is the head of BlackRock. And what he says is, I mean, listen to what he says. And then
I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. We will, and if we can have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement. This technology is going to be very important. look at it. We have been.
So when he talks about that, when he talks about tokenization of securities, actually what he's talking about is he's talking about Ethereum. Now, he's talking about a blockchain where you can do smart contracts, where you can do tokenization of securities. And that is, I mean, for those of you who don't have a dictionary, that is actually him speaking about Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is going to have more headwinds than Bitcoin. And the reason why Ethereum is going to have more headwinds than Bitcoin is because of the migration to proof of stake. So when they were proof of work, there was nothing that the SEC could say or do that would impact Ethereum, because it would be the same structure as Bitcoin. It would be as decentralized as Bitcoin. It would all be it would all be proof of work. Problem is that the minute that they went to proof of stake, they opened themselves up to an attack. Do I think that they can win this attack? Absolutely not, because Ethereum is so decentralized that even if Gary Gensler believes it is a security, is he going to shut down so many Ethereum holders? Is he going to be the guy that shuts down Ethereum in the United States? I don't think that it can happen. But there is a big difference between proof of work and proof of stake. And as this guy, Mark Harvey, says, he says, look, here's the roadmap that Vitalik, who was the founder of ETH, one of the founders of ETH, put out there. And he said, yeah, commodities don't actually have roadmaps. And he's right, because it does feel like the ETH Foundation can actually change the path of Ethereum. And the next proposal that they've actually got out there is to increase the maximum number of validators, the maximum number of ETH in each validator node from 32 to 2048. And a lot of people are now saying, well, that just makes ETH more centralized, because now you can run a node with, instead of putting in 32 ETH, you can put in 2048 ETH. So I do think that ETH and Bitcoin are both bullish. I think that ETH's going to have a couple more headwinds, but I think ETH actually comes out of it pretty strong. I think we lose a lot of soldiers from the previous bull market. And when we lose those soldiers, that's going to be this cycle over here. That's going to be this Bitcoin dominance cycle. And I don't think that Bitcoin dominance gets up all the way up to 76%. But I do think that now this Bitcoin dominance thing goes through. And you can kind of see, if you were to draw a trend line over here, you can kind of see that trend line would be very much like an upward sloping trend line. So that's what I think happens with Bitcoin. I also think that it's very, very, very coincidental that this is all lining up to happen just before or just during the halving. So if we look at the halving, and we know that the halving is probably the most reliable indicator of when things happen. Let me quickly just find you a chart of the halving. So here's a little chart of the halving, and you can see that every time that we get the halving, which is this white line over here, that is actually when we go into a tear of a bull run. So you can see literally on the day of the halving. Now, we're not very far from the halving. In fact, I think we're less than a year away. We're about 300 days away from the halving. And it does look like it's all playing out in a timeline, which is exactly that. You got the halving, which happens on the Bitcoin halving day, 25th of March. Just before that, you got the BlackRock ETF, and you've got a whole lot of other ETF approvals, which seem to be happening. And then to drive the bull market even stronger, you've then got the elections coming up straight after that. So you got the halving, you got the elections coming up straight after that, and we know now that Bitcoin is becoming very much an election issue. In fact, if we look at 3 candidates that have thrown themselves into the race, all 3 candidates are pro-Bitcoin. So you got Francis Suarez, who actually takes his salary in Bitcoin.
Well, I guarantee you that I'm the first candidate that actually gets paid in Bitcoin as a public official. And I guarantee you I'm the first candidate that's borrowed money against that Bitcoin account to buy an investment property. And I'm the first candidate that...
So he came into the race. You've got 𝗲𝗏𝗏 coming into the race. And he presented at the Bitcoin 2023 in Miami. And then you got Ron DeSantis vowing to protect Bitcoin. So what we're seeing is you got the halving, and the halving is in February, and in November you got the elections. And then you got all the people that are coming into the election campaign all actually being pro-Bitcoin, or at least mentioning Bitcoin on their agenda. What does that mean? It means that Bitcoin and potentially crypto will actually or have actually become an election issue. And if they have become an election issue, then it could be very, very bullish for Bitcoin going forward. And so that's pretty much how the thesis lines up. You've got BlackRock ETF, then you've got the halving. Then after the halving, you've got yourself this potential bull run, or this bull run as part of the 4-year cycle. And then you've got one more thing which is actually happening. And we are hearing this. I've heard this from multiple sources. And it was tweeted by Adam Cochran. So it says, heard from a friend that the rumors in DC fundraising circles are that Biden wants to shake up some chairs and cabinet positions in the finance sector to take the heat for the economy before the next election. Who tops the list? Janet Yellen. Okay, so she's first. But apparently, plenty of big ticket donors have mentioned Gary Gensler as well. Everyone who agreed with his stance on crypto are embarrassed by his approach. Starting to look like Warren, Yellen, and Gensler brought down the hammer. Too hard for everyone in their own party. I would have guessed that Powell or Yellen would be on the chopping block, but Gensler's lack of professionalism is rubbing his own party up the wrong way. If we keep highlighting the absurdity of the approach, he may actually get reined in. Of course, these type of rumors and strategy talks before re-election, so hard to say the weight it holds, but I guess it is something that we should keep. I think we should, bottom line, we should keep attacking Gary Gensler, because we keep attacking Gary Gensler. It does make him look weaker. It does give all his all the political donors. And remember, election periods are periods where there's lots of politics actually going on, and campaigning going on. And I think we need to do whatever we can to damage Gary Gensler before the elections. So I think that's it for today. Just remember that if you want to stand a chance to win $30,000, OKX, there's an OKX link before. I'm actually going to the Grand Prix with OKX. I'm going to Silverstone Grand Prix with OKX in July. I am also going to be filming Killer Whales next week. So I'm going to Los Angeles. So I'm not going to be here for a week, but I'm going to drop some shows next week. Because I'm going to be filming Killer Whales, which is this new Shark Tank type program, which we're filming in LA next week. I will see you guys again on our Twitter Spaces, which starts in about half an hour. Until then, trade well, my friend.